Hello everyone. In today's episode, we're talking about how Mother Africa's daughters are rising. Women on the continent who are shifting the narrative and changing things for generations to come. And I have two of the most perfect women who are doing that for us with me today here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you ladies. Thank you for coming in. So we've got Patricia Obozuwa, Global Corporate Affairs and Sustainability Leader. Welcome, Patricia. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And Yavi Madurai, founder of the African Prosperity Fund.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Ladies, I want to know a little bit about you, those who don't know who you are and what you do, because it's very important work. These titles sound very, very, very complicated. They sound very important. They sound like you are just all over the place. Let's start with you, Yavi.
Sure.
Tell us who you are as the founder of the African Prosperity Fund. Who is Yavi Madurai and what is she doing? And what is she doing for the continent and women on the continent?
So very simply is that, and it's something that I like to talk about in terms of the fact that it's almost like it was like a calling. And I know that sounds really fluffy, but it sounds, to me, it makes sense because there's always been this thing about my, wanting to be in the continent. I've been traveling for many years into the continent from a corporate perspective, but of late, in the last couple of years, there's been this connection that I cannot explain. And the ability to make the lives of women and youth, especially young girls on the continent, better is what drives this. So my thing that I like to say is that Mother Africa called and I answered.
And you answered.
And I answered.
Well, thank you first of all for having me. And I've done a lot of work in relation to women and young girls, but also in general in relation to the continent.
Yes.
So it just aligns with my purpose. I see my purpose as enabling people, organizations, and nations eventually thrive by portraying them in their best light to be able or make them able to better achieve their objectives and have a much more successful future.
Well, I want to know more about how you did that and what you've noticed and what you've experienced. But you are not South African, but you live in South Africa and you do this around the continent. Having lived here and obviously absorbed some of the culture, how are you seen when you travel the continent? When you say, I'm from South Africa, but but I'm not South African born. How are you seen? How do they go like, food?
Well, yeah, I'm not South African born.
Yeah.
I'm Nigerian.
Yes.
I've lived in South Africa for almost 2 years. So traveling across the continent is something I've been doing for a long time, from Nigeria and now from South Africa. I have to say, though, that living in South Africa has given me the opportunity to experience Africa in a totally different way than in my native country,
Tell us more.
Nigeria.
I'd love to know how.
Well, the cultures are different. That's the thing about when you travel across the continent, you see very clearly the wealth of diversity of cultures, social norms, and just the way that people go about their day-to-day.
Yeah.
I think the one mistake a lot of people make is painting Africa with one brush and thinking that there's a one-size-fits-all solution across the continent when it's not that way at all.
Yeah.
So, and I think I may have made that mistake a few times to a certain degree, just being in Nigeria and viewing the continent from that lens. I know that, some things are more obvious, but when you go from North Africa to East Africa to South Africa to West Africa, you start to see a lot of the similarities. But when you live in another African country, like I've been doing in South Africa for the past almost couple of years, then you experience the culture. You feel the nuances in a totally different way than you did when you were coming in for a couple of days or a couple of months.
Yes.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah.
If I'm to talk about just traveling around Africa, 3 big lessons that I've learned. The first one would be just the power of collaboration. Not thinking you know it all, but understanding that you have to collaborate with local communities,
Yeah.
people, organizations, governments to achieve any positive impact. No matter what it is, like the work I do in the regulatory environment, in communicating, and even just in the nuances. Collaboration is so critical to make things relevant to whatever part of Africa that you're in, because there's so much diversity.
Yeah. And women, more and more women like you and like Yavi are going out and doing that. And Yavi, my question to you is, as a South African woman, and you know, I'm going to say it, I'm just going to put it out there. There was a point in South Africa where we were not black enough and then we were not white enough. As an Indian woman, do you experience similar to what Patricia? Do you experience something different? Are you seen as African when you travel the continent? How do they see you?
So it is a very interesting dynamic. And you've heard me particularly say it, like when we've had discussions around how I love being in the continent.
Yeah, you're never at home.
Yeah, I'm never at home, but I love being there. And I'll tell you why. 2 reasons. The first is that, so the continent, and let's be honest, right? The continent views South Africans a certain way. Whether it's the xenophobia that plays out, whether they have issues about, you know, the whole Big Brother analogy, there's always South African things that are happening. Now, I don't come in a classic South African package, so to speak.
Yes, we know there's nothing. You are a very complicated individual
No, but also just from, you know, in terms of the fact that Black Southern Africans look a particular way, I don't. So I am very confusing across the continent. However, the acceptance of me,
you're confusing.
The acceptance of me is actually more. It's actually because they either think I'm Ethiopian, they think I'm Kenyan, they think I am Mauritian. So it depends on what lens they are using that they just take me. When I open my mouth, then it's a case of, but who do you sound like? And then it's very confusing to them. So because of that, they take too much time to try and figure out who I am. So they kind of just take me as I am, which is the best thing, because the moment I say I'm South African, and I'm proudly South African,
of course.
then it's like, but then it's too late because they've accepted me already. So,
you can't take it back.
This is it. But you know, there's something that has to be said about the fact that it doesn't matter what my origins could have been. I'm a 6th generation South African. I'm born of the soil. And I always say, nobody comes after my people, and my people is 1.4 billion Africans. So I will sort them out.
I know you can.
I will sort them out.
I know you can.
No one comes for my people. I get upset when I see, you know, Africa being exploited, the neocolonialism, and now the activist in me is coming out. But from that perspective, nobody messes with my people, and my people is Africa. So,
and you've managed to change the future of the African girl and woman. You've managed to change that in different ways. Firstly, why was it so important for you to do that? And where did you start? What was the starting point? What was the little flame that lit that torch for you?
Well, in all humility, I wouldn't say I've contributed to changing the future.
No, she's blatantly lying.
Of the African woman and girl. And it's because of my experience. Just even in the corporate world, which is where all of my experience has been, just getting in there and seeing how things work. So I've worked in these multinationals. So I've worked with people from different countries and different parts of the world. And I started from ground up. And I saw how, you know, people could be really encouraging, both African and non-African, when you're junior. But as soon as you start rising up the ranks, then you start to feel that opposition and hostility that you have to fight against.
Who's it coming from?
To rise. Oh, this is from...
I
have to be politically correct here.
Sister.
But this is from
it's
men,
your
first
opportunity
of all.
to say it.
It's from men and women. It's from men. It's from people from outside of Africa that have never viewed Africans in that light. And usually, even a lot of times when people come across Africans in senior positions, it's often African men. But over the years, a
Mhm.
lot of African women have moved into
Yes.
those senior positions. So I'm not going to blame anyone. It's just the unfamiliar. So in experiencing these things, it makes me see if in the corporate world where we are so educated, we're supposed to be blind to these things and focus on business results. If that happens there, then imagine what's happening with the women and girls across Africa. And then when you're dealing with Africans, especially African men in the corporate world, a lot of people, or a lot of them, come with the biases that they grew up with because of what they perceive African culture to be. And when I say they perceive African culture to be, even though they're Africans, they've been powerful African women in the course of history.
I want to ask Patricia to tell you the story. Will you tell Yuveka the story about, you know which story I'm talking about?
The one
about
of the
gas
pay parity.
Yes,
About
yes,
the what?
Yes.
Pay parity.
Yes.
Okay, so let me tell you my vision for women in Africa: gender equality, gender balance, and especially in the workplace. I want representation of women in the same way there's representation of men. So not just in the low levels, but in executive leadership and on boards. And then I want those women to have the power that usually comes with such roles, rather than just a ticked box, because gender equality and gender balance is all the rage
We
these
don't just want
days.
it to be the admin
But
of it and for the sake of.
Exactly. But the third thing is that when we have that power, when we're in those positions, that we are paid at par with our male colleagues, when we are contributing the same thing.
Yes.
So the story that Yavi is talking about
Oh.
is in one of the many organizations I've worked in, I hired a guy and a woman to do quite similar roles, and I hired them roughly at the same time.
Okay.
Now, this man negotiated a good package, and obviously, and from his previous job, he did have a good package. So the company offered him a 30% markup on what he was earning before, and he liked it, and he took the job. Now, the woman doing a similar job was earning very little where she was coming from.
Yeah.
And the company offered her a 50% markup on what she was earning.
Okay.
And she took the job. But these were two different recruiting officers dealing with these people. But I am the manager and the leader of that department that hired the two people. And when it was time for a salary review, I was horrified. The woman was earning significantly, just a little over half of what the guy was earning.
Wow.
And this is despite the fact that she had been offered a lot more in coming in.
Yes.
But when you're dealing with the historical issues, if the woman started at her early career earning very little, moves into, someone sells the idea of taking on a bigger role, they take on that bigger role, but they don't get a promotion and they don't get a salary increase.
They take the opportunity.
They take the opportunity and they want to show that they are the best at this. So just from her history, she was already at a disadvantage.
Yes, from the ground up,
But, well, she had a manager who's
what did you do?
Positively biased.
Tell me what you did. Tell me about the strong email you sent to, who was it? Finance, HR. Tell me what you did.
You have no idea how many emails and how many conversations and how many face-to-face meetings. But ultimately, I gave this woman a 99% salary increase.
You as well. I know what you have to offer the continent. I know the work that you do. I want you to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, especially with the African Prosperity Fund for women and girls and all of that. But I also want to know what you've learned from them, from traveling other women around the continent.
That is the best part.
Yeah.
But that is the best part.
I mean, you have a lot to offer, and tell me that,
part.
but tell me what you've learned as well.
When you are faced with an African woman, specifically a young woman, who is trying to make something of themselves, take their family out of that particular community, or being able, my biggest moments are when you speak to a cross-border trader and we we have this picture of a cross-border trader, a dusty street. There's a border. She's walking across with the vegetables on her head and all of those kind of things. When you look at the fact that she was not allowed to go to school, so she couldn't become literate, whether she wanted to or not. She cannot inherit her parents' or her father's land because she is female. She is now a single mother, and she's expected to take care of her child, bring in an income, but she wasn't given education. She wasn't given legal rights. She can't have a bank account. In South Africa, we tend to look at the world around us. There's infrastructure, there's buildings, there's education. We have so many opportunities.
Yes.
But we don't necessarily see it like that. And then you go into parts of the continent like this, and that's the lessons, that's the learning, that's the point. That is the part that really gets to, being African. It's not about what color we are, what our hair looks like. It's about being connected to that particular thing. From an African Prosperity Fund perspective, is that I created the fund in order to be able to create an enabling environment, because Africa sometimes has a trust deficit from a rest of the world perspective. So we don't necessarily always get what we should be getting. So to be able to have a
South
prosperity,
Africa in particular now, I'd imagine
sometimes,
also.
Exactly. So with the Prosperity Fund, it allows us to be able to have, or to be able to create a vehicle to get some of the funding that maybe the countries wouldn't have been able to get from a trust perspective, but also to be able to then deliver on certain programs that need to be delivered on. And I'm now going to be completely discriminate in the sense that, specifically looking at the African woman and African girl, youth in general, but specifically the African woman and young girl. For me, that is where the rubber hits the road. And to be able to drive certain agendas, to be able to have, that ability, that vehicle to move things, to move funding, to move certain aspects of it.
Absolutely amazing. And Patricia, for you, obviously doing similar work, maybe in a different way from what you described, but similar things. That's the purpose. And you speak of women going into corporate and women in Africa now who can lead other countries. But in your travels, the ordinary African girl or women, what are the opportunities that they are seizing or creating for themselves? What have you seen that they are creating, even if it's a small business? Are you seeing more and more of that?
Well, and I like that you use the word creating for themselves, because it's never given to us, but everywhere on the continent. I'm telling you, from North Africa to South to East to West, women are leading the charge. I don't remember the figure right now, but globally, African women seem to be the highest percentage of entrepreneurs versus men in any region. So women are taking opportunities. They are creating futures when none exist. And that's one of the reasons, because I think you asked me earlier what drives me, even in the corporate world, to support programs that empower women and girls. Because women can change the society. It's proven, if you empower a woman, if you put her in a position where she can earn her own income, she empowers her family. And she becomes a change agent and empowers much wider a community than her own individual self.
Okay, my beautiful queens, as we come to the end, I want to know, I just found out, just checking recently, it was Africa Women's Day. I don't know how many people actually knew that. It was Africa Women's Day. What would your wish, Yavi, be for African women and girls across the continent?
For now, my wish for African women and girls is that we find our time being now. We can't be waiting. And the last thing is, for young women in particular, is that our generation, we are not going to give you permission to take leadership. We are not built like that. You have to take it from us. We are not going to give it to you. Our generation is not going to give up that easily. Young people need to step up and they need to take leadership. We are not going to give it up.
The opportunity.
We're not going to just go here. They need to take it and they need to run with it, because actually they will do a far better job than we did.
And Patricia, your wish?
Well, my wish is for women and girls across the African continent to see a future where there's true gender balance and women empowerment. And it's, like I said, it's not just so that they can feel rewarded for what they're doing, but that is a very important factor because it motivates women to do more. And maybe I'll close with saying that it's a superpower as women to break barriers. It is a collective superpower.
Superpower.
So really empowering women, creating that gender balance, pay parity, giving women the power and agency to achieve the things they want to achieve, just creates a whole positive spiral that leads to even greater future prosperity for the continent. As African women together, we can start to rewrite history.
Absolutely.
And we can start building a future where there are countless, boundless potentials for all in Africa.
Okay, I'm setting a reminder. Call Patricia for job. Ask only for 60% increase for now. Ladies, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Only 60.
Thank you so much. Only 60 for now. Only 60 for now. That is my wish. I only want a 60%
but really,
increase.
Every time, if I'm to add something, every time a woman has the opportunity to make a difference, even if it's just for one person,
Yes.
I would encourage every woman to go ahead and do it.
And that person's going to make a difference for someone else.
Yeah.
Opportunities get created that way.
You know?
And that's what we
Absolutely.
do.
Purely because you start to change the world by you changing the room that you're in at the moment.
That's wonderful.
That is the most important
That
thing.
is
If you can't
wonderful.
change the room that you're in, then you're not about to change the world.
Thank you,
So,
ladies.
yeah,
It's been
absolutely.
amazing and inspirational.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
It's been a lovely
Let me just take a
conversation.
picture very quickly. Let me just take a picture very quickly of the women kings of the
The
continent.
women kings. The women kings.
of the
No,
continent.
but you need to be in the picture.
I'll be in the picture when we're
Okay.
done. Don't you worry.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Smile for me, women kings.